Now, briefly recognize Mr. Cummings and then Ms. Duckworth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify, when I was asking Secretary Clinton a question a moment ago, I mentioned an email that had gone from Ambassador Chris Stevens to Deputy Secretary Lamb. What I meant to say was a cable. And I just wanted to make sure the record was clear.
The record will reflect that. Ms. Duckworth.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Clinton, I'm pleased that you finally had the opportunity to be here. Before I start my line of questioning, I just want to clarify with regards to the April-June 2012 incidents. I believe that the procedure that the State Department had for these types of incidents was to actually hold what are called emergency action committee hearings on the ground immediately. And in fact, there were at least 5 on the records for June alone on the ground in both Tripoli and Benghazi, and that is the correct procedure for handling such instances. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Secretary Clinton, my focus and my job on this committee is to make sure that we never put brave Americans like Ambassador Stevens, Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, and Glenn Doherty ever on the ground again anywhere in the world without the protection that they so rightly deserve. Having flown combat missions myself in some dangerous places, I understand the dedication of our men and women who choose to serve this country overseas. I have a special affinity for the diplomatic corps because these are folks who go in without the benefit of weapons, without the benefit of military might, armed only with America's values and diplomatic words and a handshake to forward our nation's interests globally. So I am absolutely determined to make sure that we safeguard, in the name of our heroic dead, our men and women in the diplomatic corps, wherever they are around the world. So the bottom line for me, I'm a very mission-driven person, the bottom line for me is, with respect to examining what went wrong in Benghazi, is clear. Let's learn from those mistakes, and let's figure out what we need to do to fix them. I've only been in Congress not quite 3 years, almost 3 years. And in this time, I've actually served on 2 other committees in addition to this one that has looked at the Benghazi attacks, both armed services and oversight and government reform. So I've had a chance to really look at all of these documents. One of the things that I saw, and I'd like you to discuss this with you, is that the Department of State and the Department of Defense at the time seems to have not had the most ideal cooperation when it came to threat or security analysis. I do know, however, that over the past decade, they've established a tradition of working together on the ground in dangerous regions that has increased over time. However, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, which also looked at the Benghazi attacks, I'm concerned that the interagency cooperation between state and DoD was not sufficient in the weeks and months leading up to the September 11, 2012 attacks. For example, the joint contingency planning and training exercises, if we had conducted any joint interagency planning and training exercises, this may have actually helped the state and DoD to identify and fix existing vulnerabilities in the temporary mission facility in Benghazi. Moreover, regular communications between AFRICOM, which is the DoD command, and the Special Mission Benghazi could have facilitated the pre-positioning of military assets in a region where there were very real questions over the host country's ability to protect our diplomatic personnel. Secretary Clinton, within the weeks of the terrorist attacks in Benghazi happening, following that, I understand you partnered with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to establish and deploy 5 interagency security assessment teams to assess our security posture and needs at least the 19 high threat posts in 13 different countries. In fact, Deputy Secretary Nides testified before the House Foreign Affairs Committee in December of 2012 that the State Department and DoD ISAT initiative created a roadmap for addressing emerging security challenges. Why did you partner with the Department of Defense to conduct such a high priority review, and was it effective in addressing the shortfalls in Benghazi and applying it for other locations?
Congresswoman, thank you very much, and thanks for your service and particularly your knowledge about these issues rising from your own military service and the service on the committees here in the House. It's very challenging to get military assets into countries that don't want them there. And in fact, that has been a constant issue that we have worked between the State Department and the Department of Defense. The Libyans made it very clear from the very beginning they did not want any American military or any foreign military at all in their country. And what I concluded is that we needed to have these assessments because even if we couldn't post our own military in the country, we needed to have a faster reaction. Now, I certainly agree 100% with the findings of the Armed Services Committee here in the House and other investigations. Our military did everything they could. They turned over every rock. They tried to deploy as best they could to try to get to Benghazi. It was beyond the geographic range. They didn't have assets nearby because we don't have a lot of installations and military personnel that are in that immediate region. So following what happened in Benghazi, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dempsey, and I agreed to send out mixed teams of our diplomatic security and their top security experts from the Defense Department to get a better idea of the 19 high-threat posts, and that's exactly what we did. And it gave us some guidance to try to have better planning ahead of time. I know Admiral Mullen testified that it would be beyond the scope of our military to be able to provide immediate reaction to 270 posts, but that's why we tried to narrow down. And, of course, we do get help from our military in war zones. The military has been incredibly supportive of our embassy in Kabul and our embassy in Baghdad. But we have a lot of hotspots now and very dangerous places that are not in military conflict areas where we have American military presence. So we wanted to figure out how we could get more quickly a fast reaction team to try to help prevent what happened in Benghazi.
Thank you. So this ISAT process that the joint teams of DOD and state that goes out and initially looked at the 19 posts, that's great that they come up back with a report. It's kind of like, you know, the 7 reports to this, and now we have another committee. We can keep having committees to look into Benghazi, but if we never act on them, it doesn't help our men and women on the ground, and that's what I'm focused on. So what I want to know is with these ISATs, so when they came back with their recommendations to you, have they been resourced? Are they institutionalized? What has been done with this process so that it's not a snapshot in time in reaction to Benghazi attack? And I want to make sure that, you know, at the very least we're continuing the cooperation, or at least there's some sort of institutionalization of the review process to make sure that if it's not those 19 posts, if the shift now is there's 20 posts or some other posts, what has been done to make sure it's institutionalized?
Well, that was one of the changes that I instituted before I left, and I'm confident that Secretary Kerry and his counterpart, Secretary Carter at the Defense Department, are continuing that because I think it was very useful. Certainly it was useful for our security professionals and our diplomats to be partnered in that way with the Defense Department. You know, historically, the only presence at some of our facilities has been Marines. And as you know well, Marines were there not for the purpose of personnel protection. They were there to destroy classified material and equipment. And so part of the challenge that we have faced in some of these hotspot dangerous areas is how we get more of a presence. And after Benghazi, we were able to get Marines deployed to Tripoli. So this is a constant effort between the State Department and the Defense Department, but it's my strong belief that the ISAT process has been and should be institutionalized, and we should keep learning from it.
I'd like to touch on the quadrennial reviews. Again, coming from Armed Services, even as a young platoon leader out in a platoon, we got and read the Defense Quadrennial Review, which is a review that happens on a periodic basis that gives the individual soldier an idea of what the Defense Department is trying to do. And I understand you initiated something similar in the State Department. And this goes to, there's been this culture at the State Department, especially when it comes to security. I find that the Department of Defense Quadrennial Defense Review is very good at instilling culture throughout the department. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how and why you decided to do the review for the State Department? Was it useful? Is it useful? Is it getting out there? Is it a waste of time and we shouldn't be wasting money on it and we should be doing something else?
Well, I hope it's not the latter. I learned about the Quadrennial Defense Review serving on the Armed Services Committee in the Senate during my time there. I agree with you completely, Congresswoman. It's a very successful roadmap as to where we should be going, and I'm impressed that as a platoon leader, it was something that you took into account. So when I came to the State Department, there had never been anything like this done. There was no roadmap, and the State Department, USAID, would come up and fight for the money that they could get out of Congress, no matter who was in charge of the Congress, every single year. It's 1% of the entire budget, and it was very difficult to explain effectively what it is we were trying to achieve. So I did institute the first ever quadrennial diplomacy and development review. And one of the key questions that we were addressing is what is this balance between risk and reward when it comes to our diplomats and our development professionals? Because the first thing I heard when I got to the State Department was a litany of complaints from a lot of our most experienced diplomats that they were being hamstrung, that the security requirements were so intense that they were basically unable to do their jobs. And of course, then from the security professionals, who were all part of this, what we call the QDDR, they were saying, we don't want you to go beyond the fence. We can't protect you in all of these dangerous circumstances. How you balance that, and it is a constant balancing of risk and reward in terms of what we hope our diplomats and development professionals can do. So it's been done twice now. Secretary Kerry, in his tenure, has done the second QDDR, and I hope it becomes as important and as much of a roadmap as the QDR has for our Defense Department and our military services.
Thank you. I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentlelady from Illinois. The chair would now